When to trade? When do you trade? When do you actually take that trade? Well, you can only trade, if you're trading the market maker's business model, you can only trade when you have a sense of knowing. Now the sense of knowing is, it comes to when you're watching the box, you're watching the manipulation, you're watching how the market comes out, and you're not seeing a market pattern as such, but you're suddenly realising a sense of knowing, I can see the game plan. I can see how the market maker is going to make money from this accumulation area. I can see that. So at that point, you are able to take a trade, not based on a chart pattern, but on that sense of knowing. So where does the sense of knowing come from? Where does it actually come out of you from? Again, we come back to our form versus content. If we think about our form, we're just looking at the chart surface, and that could match exactly the same form that we saw a week ago, or something, 2 days ago, or yesterday we could see. But by looking at the content, we remain connected. And so we look at the content, we're working out what's going on behind, and this will give us gradually as thing goes on, as your training becomes more, as your skill becomes more, you will just look at a market and see, right, I know what phase that market's in, and if it's in that phase now, I know the next phase it's going to go to. I'll look for this bit of manipulation period. Okay, I now see that. Okay, right, got the story, and now you're going to enter the trade, and now you're going to make money by default. So that sense of knowing is when you start to recognise not the form, you recognise the content, and that's how you get that sense of knowing on there. So that now brings us on to beliefs, which is really the whole sort of everything's encountered into beliefs. Because if you think about this, you can't do anything until you have a belief. Now, I want to say anything at all. I'll clarify that a little bit for you in a moment. But basically, we're driven by beliefs. We're driven. You're watching these DVDs because you believe that as a result of these DVDs, you can make money in the market, and that's true. That's true. This is going to happen. But you've got to have that belief before you can progress and go forward. You have to have that belief before you actually could buy these DVDs, for example. Successful trading. Now, successful trading is about recognising the content of the many different forms the trading chart may take. Patterns are always going to vary. The shape of the chart is always going to vary. And to try and trade these is like the proverbial dog trying to chase its tail. The content of the market maker's business model will always be the same. The content of stock taking or running will always have the same desired outcome. This is exactly the same activity each and every time. The form or patterns of the stock taking will not always be the same. Stick with the content and you will always understand the stock taking, and subsequently you will understand the forthcoming market move and from where that move is going to start. We're going to talk about paper boats. Now, my belief is that the market, when we look at the market as a general whole, all the prices and everything else that's going on in the market, is an ever-shifting ocean of what? Beliefs. That's what I believe. Ever-shifting ocean of beliefs, not prices. In other words, we've got this constantly ever-shifting ocean of people buying and selling, people believing the market is going to go up or the market is going to go down. And when we're looking at that, we've got to accept the fact that something's going to be influencing that, as it were. Now, the story I'd like to sort of bring this in or get this into your mind with is I want you to imagine something. I want you to imagine that you're looking out at a lake and you can see lots of little paper boats. And in these paper boats, each one of these paper boats, thousands of them out there, are little individual traders sitting in these paper boats. And what we see is that the breeze is gently blowing around, as it were. And as you observe the breeze coming in, and the only way you can see the breeze, of course, is by the boats, how they move off. And you notice how that one or two of them may break away, and then the rest start to follow off, and then the breeze changes, and then they come back around. That's the image I want you to have in your mind about how beliefs are manipulated. How those boats literally are being blown around by the wind, and the market makers, being the wind, wherever they move the boats, are manipulating the minds of the traders inside the boats. Of course, if they weren't inside the boats and they were out at an vantage point, then they could see down onto that. But you gradually keep that in your mind. The wind, the market makes the wind, and that's how the market is being pushed around and believing. And that's where you end up, the 95%, the masses, as it were. Okay, so the dependent mind. Now, the dependent mind is because if you imagine all these little traders sitting inside these boats, they're dependent on one another. They're watching one another. they see their mate's boat go off, or their fellow trader boats, and they see them all going this way, and of course they want to join in, they want to go. They must be right, because that's where all the boats are going. And so you have this, the dependent mind is watching the chart. If you're watching the form of the chart, you're becoming dependent upon the other beliefs around all the outside traders around. So you're becoming dependent upon what the other traders are doing. You're becoming dependent on the form the chart is taking. You're being drawn in to the paper boat scenario that's moving around, whereas really the market makers are controlling this by angling the direction of the wind where they're going to move the boats. I hope that story sort of, I hadn't thought about it too much, but I think that story is a pretty good one for thinking about how the boats can be moved around by the wind, and the dependent mind being each boat depending on the other, or thinking about what the other boats are doing. Okay, now what I want you to do is to take a different perspective of this. I don't want you to be in the boats with these people. I don't want you to be one of these. I want you to take a different perspective of a general against the foot soldier. And I want you to again think of an image. You're a general, okay, and you're on the top of the hill here. There's you up there, and you're looking down here, and here's the battle raging away. All the soldiers are fighting up down here, and everything's going on. You've got different armies attacking in, and all this all there, and you're right up here, nice and safe. And now, what's the job of the general? The job of the general is to look down on here and observe what's going on. Now, if he stays up here, he can observe what's going on. He can see if there's going to be a counter-attack. He can see if the soldiers are going to be outflanked. He can observe all this information up here. Now, what I'm teaching you to do is to be the general. I want you to be up here and look at this and see all the things, the accumulation, the manipulation, and the profit release start to unfold. But let me explain to you what happens for most traders when they start off. A lot of traders will start off in this position. They're up on top of the hill here, and they can take a dispassionate view of what's going on in front of them, and they're looking on their charts. And what happens is, the very moment that they take the trade, they start to descend, and they move lower down the hill. And with each successive move lower, they are able to see less and less of what's going on down in here, until eventually what you end up with is the general is right down here with his men. And now, once he's down here, he cannot see. He's completely blind. He cannot see if there is a flank attack. He cannot see if there's another opposing force coming in. He cannot see if reinforcements are coming in as he'd asked. So he is now in a great deal of trouble down here, and the other general sitting up on here can now see this general down here, knows that he's got him. This guy up here has got him, because now the general's down, he's in with the foot soldiers, he's in with the little boats, he's all around there. And this is what you must guard against, because this is looking at the form of the market. Okay, this is looking at the chart, this is staring at the front. When you're down here, stuck in here with all these others, you are looking at the form the chart is taking in front of you. You need to get away from this area as quickly as possible, climb back up here and get back up on the top here and take the perspective, looking down on the general, looking over what's going on, and you're simply trying to observe accumulation, manipulation, profit release. You want the profit release so you can make money, and the only way you'll make money is by staying up here and observing the market maker's business model, which is going on down here. If you descend down the hill, get into there, you're going to be chart watching, and you're going to get yourself into trouble very, very quickly. It's story time. A beautiful blonde, a house in the distance, big and brown, 3 dishes, falling asleep and waking up, porridge. So, did you get the contents of the story? When did you understand the story was about Goldilocks and the 3 bears? This is how you trade the market maker's business model. First, you're trained in recognising the model in its entirety. Next, you move on to recognising the individual phases, which then provide you with correct and accurate timing for each and every trade that you take. You are literally staying on top of the hill with a general in the ideal position to be able to clearly observe the content playing out for each and every market move. Completed accumulation. I'm often asked, when will accumulation be complete? In other words, when will the market makers be ready to make their move? If you ever think about what the accumulation actually is, and subsequently understand that it's about accumulating that which you can dispose of at a later date for profit, you'll be automatically provided with your answer, which is accumulation will be completed when the market makers have accumulated that which they can be confident of distributing into a profit release phase at a later time. What this boils down to is that accumulation cannot be measured in terms of time. That is to say, we cannot say accumulation will be completed within an hour. What might take 1 hour one day might only take 5 minutes as a result of successful stop running in another day. Again, stick with the content of the chart rather than the form it is taking. I did say I'd be mentioning form and content a lot, didn't I?